Hi, I am the founder and director of Natchathiram CIC. So I am a special educational needs coordinator. I've been in SEN teaching since 2015. Um, so pretty much started it when I was like 18 years old, because obviously I'm not more than 21 now. Um, but yeah, I didn't even really realize that it was kind of that special for like a Tamil person to be kind of teaching special needs. Like I didn't think about it. I didn't think it was taboo. I didn't really realize, I guess, the kind of the extent of which special needs is kind of so hidden within our Tamil community. I think for me, it was just something I wanted to do. I mean, like for me, I went into special needs because I went to a very good school when I was, in secondary, but I absolutely hated it. I felt like I was like the dumbest kid there. And I always felt like there was no one there to look after the dumb kids, as it were. And I wanted kids who felt like that to have more support. And I realized in mainstream schools, unfortunately, mainstream schools just aren't interested. Mainstream schools, back in the day when I was teaching, um, kind of, that kind of mainstream thing, it was the GCSE grade C was what students needed to get, and teachers were marked on how many of your students got those grade C's, or you're grade 4 now. And I thought that, but that doesn't make sense, because yes, a grade C or a grade 4 is absolutely amazing, but it's not the be all and end all. But obviously for a school, that's what they're kind of marked on, as it were, that all of their grades at the end, when they do their posters after GCSE results day, is 95% of our students got a grade A to C or whatever. But I didn't care about them. I genuinely didn't care about those kids that got the C or the grade 4 or the grade 5. I wanted those kids, I wanted to be able to support those kids who failed or who weren't doing so well, because I wanted to know, was it because we weren't helping them? Was there a reason that they um, weren't able to get the grades? Was it just because they weren't getting the support in school? Were they not getting the support at home? Were they not able to academically kind of access the work? And so I went into special needs because I figured it was a much more holistic approach. Special needs schools tend to kind of look at the child a lot more. It tends to be a lot more about, if the child is autistic or has ADHD or has, social, emotional, mental health issues, it then becomes a lot more about what are the barriers that are stopping them from getting a grade at GCSE, or what is the barrier from that's stopping them from being able to sit down and focus in a lesson. And that's kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to focus on those day-to-day barriers, not the beautiful grades at the end. A lot of scars, physical and mental. I worked in a school for children with autism for 3 years, and it was the hardest 3 years of my life, both physically and mentally. I got beaten up pretty much. I got pretty much beaten up every day. I have been spat at, I've been bitten, I have been literally jumped on and hit with those, those canes that they put in plants. Those long, like wooden canes that they put in plants. The stupid head at my school decided that our courtyard needed those and with the plants. And so the kids decided, one kid in particular, realised that actually that was a really great weapon, and we spent an entire afternoon getting belted by them. Yeah, it was just one of those things. But yeah, uh, but I stayed for 3 years at that school, and obviously I continue to work in that field because I believe in these kids, and I believe that anyone with the right love and care and support can thrive. And I think it's so ingrained in us that, we need to survive. We need to survive. And, potentially coming from a Sri Lankan background and, being Tamil and, having had parents who fled before the war, but then, hanging out with people, who fled the war. And, it's that mentality, right, of just surviving. But we're now no longer in that place. We are no longer technically just needing to survive. Technically now we need to be able to teach our kids to be able to thrive, and it's not just kind of going, right, what's the next thing, it's actually, how am I going to get the best out of all of this? And I have the know-how, just from years of experience, and I love what I do, and I soak things up with regards to the kids. And because it is for the kids, I genuinely just want what's right for them. I don't do it out of ego. I don't do it for the money, because seriously, there is no money in it. I don't do it for the praise, because it's a thankless job. I do it because a lot of people don't.
So, special education.
When I first went into special needs, my dad was very much like, they're all a bit weird. Like, what are you doing? Why don't you just continue to teach maths and then you can become head teacher? And I was like, that sounds like the worst thing in the world, Dad. It's like, no, Appa. And like I said, it just, if you go around and, I've met loads of teachers now with the Sri Lankan Tamil background, and they are brilliant, but they are all science teachers and computer science teachers and maths teachers, and they are all in mainstream education. And I have yet to meet one person who is actually in special needs and who knows what special needs is about and knows kind of the ins and outs of, of an education healthcare plan, or the best ways to support a parent or a child that has an educational healthcare plan. And I think one of the things I now want to be able to do through Natchathiram is I want to be able to change that.
Have you started making any changes?
I think I have. In the sense of, just through the the stuff that we've started doing via socials, and the stuff just from the launch, and people have kind of come up to me and said they've been able to kind of speak to their mum. One of the amazing speakers that we had at the launch, she actually told me that she had screenshot some of the stuff that we'd written in Tamil about ADHD to show her parent, because her mum just thought ADHD was a made up thing. Whereas the Tamil kind of translations was able to kind of was able to help her kind of explain to her mum that actually it's genuinely something that's there and something that she can't help. And I think it's also about I've spoken to a few parents, and I'd like to think I've given them some kind of hope, or maybe some kind of like the beginnings of a support network, because I've kind of been able to say to them, okay, like, you're not on your own here. Like, you might live somewhere totally far away, you might not have your family here, you might not be able to explain to your family what's going on, but that's okay, because we're here and we can explain, or we can help you explain, but also we can help just first of all support you and your child, and help you have the tools or get the tools that you need for your child.
So you're pretty much achieving the long-term goal of like supporting Tamil families by giving them what they need in terms of community services. Is that the goal of Natchathiram?
We're beginning to, yeah. The goal of Natchathiram has always just been to support Tamil families, right, of children, of families, families who have children with special needs, supporting them, whether that be, helping them get an assessment for their child, helping their child with their education healthcare plan, seeing if we can get an occupational therapist in, see if we can get an educational psychologist in or a speech and language therapist. It's also, as I kind of started speaking to parents, it also started becoming about getting parents the emotional support. Because as a parent myself, I just sat there and I thought about how much it must take a parent to pretty much fight your family, and have to go through things on your own. Things like autism and ADHD, if you don't know about it, it comes across as bad parenting. And we know it's not, but unfortunately, most Tamil families won't. And, it comes across as you don't know how to raise your child. Why can't your child sit still? Why is your child loud? And I think for me, I want parents to not feel so lonely in that kind of space. I don't want them to think it's a death sentence or a prison sentence if their child was to get, diagnosed. And I feel like so many parents put off diagnosis because they're scared of what that means in the long run for their child. But actually, a diagnosis, if it's needed, is probably going to be the best thing, because your child is actually going to be able to get the support that they need for, longer term, which is not going to, which wouldn't be the case otherwise. With an educational healthcare plan, the local authority actually has a legal duty to look after your child until they're 25 years old. If you don't have that, then you're pretty much screwed at 16. Like, there's no legal duty after that. And so kind of like that extra 9 years and kind of being able to go, right, actually, this is the kind of support I need. And even like in primary school, if you don't have an educational healthcare plan, but your child is not talking, or like, they have a particular way of walking, or, they have sensory needs or things like that. If you don't have that educational healthcare plan, you cannot fight for various therapists or, various reports or various things in school that will make life easier for your child. And you also won't have that kind of teachings yourself as to how to make your life easier and your child's life easier.
Do you want to give us a little intel about the EHCP drop-in session?
So EHCPs are educational healthcare plans. They are pretty much, you will get them as soon as your child is assessed, and it has various different sections on it. It starts off with, your basic kind of where you live, etc. But then it goes into the best way to communicate with me, as in communicate with the child. A bit about the child's background, a bit about the parents, what the parent thinks about the child, what the child thinks about the child. And then it will also then kind of go into like what strengths and needs a child has. So, in terms of sensory issues, for example, we can turn around and say, the child walks with no issues, but sometimes has, sensitivity to certain materials, so actually can't wear school uniform trousers, will only wear tracksuit bottoms. So things like that will go into a EHCP. So then on an EHCP, if that is a need, so if the need is your child can't wear school uniform trousers for whatever reason, because of the material, etc., and they will only wear jogging bottoms, etc., that it becomes, the outcome will be my child will only wear, tracksuit bottoms or whatever. So then the school that takes that child on has to recognise that you will not be able to fight with that child to get them into school uniform trousers. What you might be able to do is find trousers very similar to jogging bottoms that you can get that child into. Maybe they look a bit more like formal trousers, but have the feel of jogging bottoms. Or you might just have to let that child go to school in his jogging bottoms or in her jogging bottoms. But you cannot then turn around and say, yes, I'm going to take that child on in school, but only if that child wears the correct school uniform, because it already says in that EHCP, my child cannot wear actual school trousers because of the sensitivity to the uniform. So it's knowing the legalities behind an EHCP. An EHCP is a legal document. The school and the local authority have to take into consideration everything that's on an EHCP. So when the EHCP is on a desk of the head or whoever's doing the referrals at the school, the head or the referrals manager, they have to look at it, and I think they have 15 days to get back to the local authority and say whether they can take that child on or not take that child on. If they say they can take that child on, what they are saying is everything that is on that EHCP. So if that says that the child will have 20 hours of speech and language therapy per term, the school is saying my school can arrange 20 hours of speech and language therapy per term.
Okay. So is that arranged by the school or the parents?
That would be arranged by the school.
Okay.
But they're saying, we are able to do that. What a lot of parents are not understanding, and unfortunately, local authorities and schools, and it's become a big kind of mess, especially since COVID, is budget cuts and just the backlog from COVID and everything else has meant EHCPs are meant to be updated annually. There's something called an annual review that's held every year between the parent and the school, and sometimes the local authority come in as well, depending on how severe the case is, where they literally go through everything on the EHCP. They go through what your child's strengths are. They go through what the child's needs are. They look at the outcomes. What do you think this child should have achieved by this time next year? And all of that will be updated. However, in the past 6 months that I've been doing this at my current school, I have looked at EHCPs and annual reviews that have not been updated for 5-6 years. So basically, I've got kids in year 11 and their EHCPs have not been updated since year 6.
Okay.
It's because of the COVID backlog. It's because of budget cuts. There's no people in local authorities to be chasing this up. The schools have obviously had, especially special educational needs schools, they have had huge turnaround in staff. So it's just not been at the top of everyone's radar. But that means these kids have not technically had what they should have had for over 5 years.
So how does that impact them in the sense, like, with school and stuff?
How it impacts them is, so for example, like one of my kids, he's a completely different child now to how he was in year 6 from when his EHCP was done. But I worry that he's almost kind of gone under the radar because he is, such a kind of, easy, happy-go-lucky child now type thing. I'm worried that his anxieties don't get picked up on. I'm worried that he has a lot of absences, and I'm worried that we haven't picked up on it because it's not been kind of properly monitored and kind of looked at in his annual reviews. And now, obviously, next year he's meant to be going to college, and it's like, well, how am I meant to know what's going to be the best place for you when we haven't been able to keep an up-to-date record of everything you've kind of done over the past year, or over the past 5 years? Because I don't have an accurate record of what he's done from year 7 to 11.
So was it like completely kind of abandoned kind of vibes?
Pretty much.
Okay. So how are you working on that?
So in my school, it's in my school, what I'm doing is I'm pretty much rewriting the entire thing. For a lot of my students, it's not the easiest thing in the world, but it is just what it is, and unfortunately, it's where we are at now. Um, I have obviously met families, Tamil families, who have got EHCPs, but actually haven't spent kind of as much time on them as potentially they should do. But again, that's because, one, they don't understand the language. Two, they don't understand the kind of the legal implications of it. They don't even understand what an EHCP is meant to be about. They don't understand they don't understand that sometimes you just have to read it, like literally line by line. Like some of the EHCPs I've read, it doesn't even make sense to me. And technically I'm meant to know what goes on in them, but it's meant to make sense to, like a layperson, someone who doesn't understand educational language or social care language or healthcare language. Anyone should be able to pick it up and understand what an EHCP is saying. But sometimes people literally will just copy and paste from a professional's report. And I've just sat there sometimes and I've ended up Googling entire kind of like chunks of an EHCP because I'm like, what does that even mean? What does this mean for this child? And then, if you add in our Tamil parents and their language barriers and things like that, I kind of go, well, how much of the EHCP are they, what are they getting out of it? How much is their child getting out of it? If you don't know what it is that your child is entitled to, you're not going to be able to fight for it.
Is there a place where, like, not underachieving, but like Tamil parents are like kind of like the ethnic minority people who don't kind of know what's going on with the EHCP to go to kind of get help from?
So some boroughs are quite good in the sense of they'll have, like the ones that have more ethnic minorities in, they tend to have translators that will help you within their education, local authorities and stuff like that. I have never seen any place that has got like translated documents, which is obviously what we're trying to do for Natchathiram. But I've never seen that kind of anywhere else. TSC, which is Tamil Special Children, they are an incredible resource of parents and children and siblings of families with children with special needs. But my understanding is they're a lot more kind of from a kind of parental and sibling kind of thing. They do a lot of amazing work for the parents and a lot of amazing work for the kids and the siblings themselves. It's absolutely fantastic. But again, not really much within the EHCP scope. I'm not really sure if there's anything as such within the EHCP scope. I know there is, I can't off the top of my head remember what it's called, autism something. And she is currently working on getting a sensory bus for her. She's also a community interest company. And she's currently working on like the sensory, she's working on like the therapeutic side of autism and, trying to get things like that in place for children with autism. Mine, I want to make sure our kids and our families know what they're entitled to. And unfortunately, as in any part of the world, but especially in England, where where people go, oh, it's free. It's very much he who shouts the loudest will get. And if you don't know what you're shouting for, you're not going to shout. It's going to be very, very quiet. And I do believe that shouting and fighting for your child is the number one thing that we can do. And especially when we have a child with special needs, I think we have to be their everything whilst they get attuned to the environment that they're in. Some of those kids, some of our kids may never have the ability to shout and tell you what they need. So then it will be forever our roles to help them get what they need. But the starting point has to be parents. The starting point has to be families. The starting point has to be communities, our Tamil communities, that don't see it as a burden or bad vibes or bad juju or negative energy or any of those things, because it's not.
Our parents tend to hide stuff. Like,
Exactly.
it's nothing bad. It's just another stuff to like talk about and figure out.
It's not bad.
It's literally like they just hide it. It's something that needs to be spoken so that you can figure out a way.
Exactly.
And they don't understand.
It's about asking for support. There's no harm in asking for support.
But like, obviously that's what Natchathiram does, right? To give the support they need, obviously, if parents are bold enough to kind of come out and speak as well. But how many Tamil parents come out and speak? That's a question. But yeah, so that's the end goal of Natchathiram. Like, what is Natchathiram's future plans?
Natchathiram's future plans is, I'm all about breaking barriers, glass ceilings, I don't know, breaking ignorant minds. Breaking taboos, I guess. And like I said, I never ever thought of special needs as a taboo subject until really and truly you came into my life, and then I was like, really? Like I genuinely didn't think of it, because I don't know, I just didn't think of it as a taboo subject. And I think for me, I pretty much kind of just want to go on a roadshow now and kind of go and kind of speak to people and let them know, ignorance isn't bliss. Ignorance is absolutely not bliss. You have to go around and let people know that these things are out there and they're not wrong and they're not bad, and our children are going to get them and our grandchildren are going to get them. And it's about knowing what's there. It's about being aware. It's about not hiding them in cupboards and saying, don't go out, or, I'm not going to support you. It's about kind of giving out the resources for parents and for siblings and for family members to kind of understand what EHCPs are about themselves, and to turn around and one day go, actually, Suja, you know what? I don't need your help on this because I know what I'm doing. And if a family member is able to say that to me, I'm 100% quite happy to stand back and say, you know what you're doing. I'm very happy. For me, this is just about getting the word out and supporting our Tamil families, because this is something that we can help them with. And in my eyes, it's an easy fix. And, maybe it's an easy fix for me because, I'm privileged in the fact that, I don't have to fight that fight by myself. But I think it's an easy fix for other people as well, because they will have the full force of Natchathiram behind them as well.
I mean, Natchathiram is there to support them emotionally as well.
Exactly.
And we are doing a great job so far. I did a bit of everything, and we did the launch event, and we did get the awareness. We just need to do a bit more and to make sure that Tamil parents understand with it.
How do you find, obviously, your experiences how, and you know, like speaking to parents now and listening to obviously me rant and rave to you now, how do you find with regards to your parents when you compare them to parents that you've heard about?
For me, it was different because mine was like a whole incident that just happened, and they were kind of getting used to like, because obviously I was not meant to be alive.
Yeah.
So for them, it was like, oh, it's a blessing. She's here, even with her like disability. And for my parents, it was like very kind of, as much as it was hard to kind of adjust to it, they were very open about it. And yes, they did hear stuff from other people. They didn't take it to the head because they had a better future with us and not them. And I don't see a lot of parents doing that, and they kind of just take it to the head. My parents don't, as much as yes, they do kind of get concerned and, oh, what's my future going to be like, and that kind of stuff. They know that I've created a stable future for myself, and they don't sit there and like rant about it for like, maybe they do for like 5 minutes, but that's about it.
Mm.
Whereas other town parents, they just sit and kind of let it get into their head and overthink it and do nothing about it. So that allows them to kind of just get stuck in one place. And obviously, my parents, they weren't, I wouldn't say they were experienced, but they had like, they heard a lot of experiences from staying in the hospital and that kind of stuff, right?
Mm.
So they were like, okay, you know, this is how life is going to be like. This is what we need to work on. Like, for me, my mom worked on my educational side. My dad worked on like, how am I going to get better kind of side. And obviously I had my brother, my sister, and I don't know what they did, but they were doing something. And I don't think a lot of parents kind of look into it that way. And they
Mm.
just be like, oh, my kid's like this. I should just pay on them and kind of give them space
Mm.
and not help them get out of it. And that's seen by a lot of Tamil parents. And that's what we need to do. Get them into a mindset of looking into the future and not just get stuck.
So I also know, and I don't actually think I've spoken to you about this as such before, but I know your mum knows a lot of people. So she must know people who have children with, you know, neurodivergent behaviours, etc. What has she kind of said about that?
But my mum, it's literally like nothing, obviously, because she has me. She's like, because if you think of it in a way, they're probably much capable than me. So for my parents, they're like, it's just something. It's like, you know, how when you fall down, you have a scar, or you kind of fracture your arms for some time. Fracture your arms. You fracture your arm or leg or, you know, something for some time. And you just kind of heal, right? So for my parents, anything is like just another injury. And they don't like take it seriously, which concerns me sometimes because there's like something concerning them and they're like, "Oh, well," and I'm like, no. So it's like they
Because you're
also
always
have
getting injured, but
exactly, I get injured all the time. So for them, it's like nothing. And then I'm just there like, why? But I think it's because my parents also experienced, like, they have me for 13 and a half years now since my injury. So they're kind of like, oh, this is nothing compared to like whatever, because they've seen much worse than me, right? They've seen brain dead people, they've seen people who are completely dependent on their parents or completely bedridden, that kind of stuff. So for them, it's like, oh, they're doing much better. They're doing so well. And to be honest, like, most of the people my parents see are actually quite successful than people who are completely normal, if that's the right word to use. So for them, it's like nothing. Like, they're just another person with special abilities.
yeah.
Obviously, you know because you know them. Yeah, I mean, my parents kind of have a different reach to stuff because of,
Their own experiences.
To be honest, yes. But I also feel like they also grew up like that as well, because of the war and stuff. They did see a lot of trauma.
But so did a lot of ours.
I think they saw the trauma the other way. My parents saw it the other way.
I know a lot of ours did, but still in Sri Lanka, there's no real support for children. Again, even there, that they're classed as naughty kids that don't get to go to school because they don't have training and stuff there. A lot of I think one of the other charities ended up sending their teachers to India to get special needs training because they couldn't find the special needs training in Sri Lanka. So it stems from here to Sri Lanka, do you know what I mean? And obviously since starting the Natchathiram Insta, we've had people from other countries message us and kind of say, we're glad to see you're doing what you're doing because we're trying to do that in our country too. So I think it runs across the board. I don't think there's any place that's fully inclusive.
I think when I started working for you, I thought it was just an issue kind of with the ethnic minorities, and I thought there was a better system in the UK. But then once I started working, that's when I realized no, it's just a whole issue anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah. I genuinely didn't realize how bad the issue was. I think until you told me a story, and then I was like, oh, that doesn't make sense. Because I didn't understand it. I didn't understand how something like a special need could be taboo, because it was it didn't make sense to me.
It's just people. I think the way they were. It's not even the way they were grew up, because obviously my parents, they just grow up the same way. It's just the way they kind of associate it with something oh, it's bad, when it's completely not bad. It's not something that we choose.
Exactly.
It's not a life decision. It just happens.
Exactly. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, when I left my ex last year, I was judged and I was, labelled a good few things. But I expected that, because even though in my head I don't see it as my fault, I also sat there and I thought, what, at the end of the day, it's a marriage and I'm the one who left. So, there's going to be words said, names called. And I kind of understood it was taboo, kids, blah, blah, blah. So I expected divorce, leaving marriage, leaving kids, all of that to be taboo. I understood that in my head. Drinking alcohol as a woman, I don't understand it, but I expect it because, again, ignorance of some people. But the special needs thing, I cannot get over. And I think when you told me about some of your stories, I think it still shakes me, because I still sit there and think, you were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and surely it's luck that you are alive and doing medicine at Cambridge. Where's the unlucky part in it? I don't get it. I genuinely don't get it. And I don't, and I think that's where I will struggle, is trying to kind of understand that bit.
It's fine. No one gets that part. Unless them. No one understands it. That's the point. Yeah. But I feel sometimes it doesn't make sense. But to them it completely makes sense, and they don't even want to agree, even when they realize it doesn't make sense.
No, that's just their stubbornness though, isn't it? But I don't know. So I feel like that's almost kind of, it started off as me wanting to support parents and families with their EHCPs and helping these children get a voice. And now it's become a bigger mission of just bring about as much awareness as possible. You know, go on these podcasts, talk about it on socials, you know, go to Tamil schools, just talk about it to anyone that will listen and kind of go, this is just incredibly normal stuff. And you're missing out on some amazing people by just being ignorant and refusing to support them, because actually with the right support, some of these kids could be absolutely amazing. And they could live better lives than you, which is probably what you're scared about. But, you know.
With the right guidance, everyone can do better. And these kids can definitely do better. Obviously, we saw a lot of kids who did so well at the TSC event and our event. And it surprises me because, like, I was very shook. The way it kind of was like, it was so good. Like, the performances were so good.
And that all came about from the right support.
Exactly.
That didn't come about from parents who hid.
Because all of the parents were out there, they were trying to showcase their kids, their skills, trying to get the help they need. It was crazy, like in a good way.
Exactly.
It was so good. Like, I can't get over it. It was so good.
And I think that's kind of what we just continuously need to harness, that notion of, like you said, anyone is capable of anything if they have the right support, and us just being able to give that support. And also just the guidance and kind of saying, don't hide away, because there's absolutely nothing wrong in what you're doing.
Exactly. I mean, hopefully we get that out there and tell them that. And obviously, we are nearly there. We have got some sort of reach.
We've started to. And I think that's, yeah.
The audience is growing.
The audience is growing, and the audience 2025 will not know what hit them, because all you're going to see is mine in your face everywhere. That's the plan.
Exactly. Just remember our faces, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Yep. See you. Bye-bye.